Have you ever felt that your peace is too fragile? That it is enough a crooked word, an unexpected delay, or a misunderstood silence for everything to fall apart inside? We live as if our calm was a candle lit amid strong winds, always about to go out, always vulnerable to what comes from outside. But what if the real fortress was not in control of the world, but in control of itself? What if the serenity you so much seek is not something to conquer out there, but something to protect in here? Stoicism reveals to us a truth that many go through life without realizing it. It is not the world that needs to change for you to have peace. It is your way of existing within it. The calm that lasts, which does not break in the face of chaos, does not arise from the silence around it, but from the silence that you learn to cultivate in the midst of noise. It does not depend on the mood of others, on the news of the day, or on favorable circumstances. It depends only on a choice, not to react as always, not to lose yourself in every turbulence, to anchor where everything seems to break down. In this video, we will go through 7 Stoic lessons that are not just philosophical concepts, but practical tools to shield your mind, strengthen your spirit, and cultivate a calm that is not negotiated. Let's talk about emotional control, boundaries, focus, and detachment. Not as escape, but as art of living with lightness and firmness, even when life charges your highest price. Before we follow, write in the comments, "Today, I choose to protect my peace." That phrase is not an ornament. It is a silent commitment. By writing it, you send a message to your own subconscious that from now on you choose to be presence, not reaction. The serenity you want already exists in you. It just needs to be awakened. Number 1. Disquieting does not come from outside, comes from you. Have you ever wondered why certain days seem more difficult, even when, objectively, nothing serious happened? Why a look through, an ignored message, or any delay has the power to destabilize you inside? Most of us live as if inner peace was a prize conditioned to the good behavior of the world, as if it depended on the kindness of others, the harmony of circumstances, the fate of events. But Stoicism pulls us out of this illusion, firmly, but also with lucidity, by reminding us that no external storm has the power to sink us without our permission. The restlessness does not arise from the facts. It springs from the fertile soil of interpretations. The mind, when it is not trained, acts as a cracked mirror. Everything that reflects gains distorted, threatening contours. A small criticism becomes an unforgivable offense. A setback becomes a sign of failure. And suddenly, we are adrift, giving control of our internal state to any stimulus that reaches us. The calm, in this scenario, becomes dependent, and therefore, vulnerable. This is where Epictetus offers us a simple but profound antidote. It does not disturb us what happens, but what we think about what happens. This phrase is not just an elegant idea. It is a blade. It cuts deep into the illusion that the world owes us comfort, understanding, or predictability. It shows, without a doubt, that the key to serenity is where it has always been, within us. In the choice we make between reacting and responding, between amplifying or dissolving, between offending and understanding. Think for a moment at all times that you felt hurt. How many of these pains were born out of the act itself, and how many were the result of the story that your mind built around it? Perhaps the other did not want to despise you. Perhaps the error was not a personal attack. Maybe life only followed its course without the intention of testing you. When you begin to question these automatic narratives, something subtle begins to change. You stop being a victim of your own thoughts, and you start to be your healer. Imagine now that your mind is like a house. Every thought that you allow to enter without surveillance is like a visit that sits on the couch without taking off your shoes. If you don't clean that presence, it dirts everything. And chaos, when it grows, always starts with the door that we leave unopened. The Stoic, on the contrary, keeps your inner house organized, not by rigidity, but by wisdom. It doesn't stop emotions. It receives them, listens to them, and redirects them. He understands that what we feel is legitimate, but that the way we act from this is always a choice. The real strength is not in repressing what you feel, but in not allowing it to dictate who you are. The deep calm, the one that cannot be stolen, is not the absence of emotion. It is the presence of consciousness. It is the silence that grows when urgency gives way to observation. It is the interval between stimulus and response. It is the power to stop, breathe, and then decide. You can train that. You can start now. Whenever something shakes, you ask, what exactly am I feeling? Where does that come from? This reaction brings me closer to who I want to be or get away. And if the answer is uncomfortable, great. Because that's where the chance to change lives. It's not about being perfect. It's about being awake. To be stoic is not to be immune. It is to be conscious. It is to walk through the turbulences with a firm soul, the eyes open and the heart centered. The restlessness can knock at the door, but you decide whether it enters or if it just watches through the window. Number 2, the calm begins in the body, not in the head. We live believing that the imbalance begins in the mind, and in part, that is true. But there is an even more subtle, almost invisible origin that we often ignore. The body. Little is said about it, but emotional lack of control, constant irritation, chronic anxiety are often just the cry of the physicist trying to warn that harmony has been broken. Stoicism, far from being a philosophy only of lofty ideas, teaches us that the path to serenity also passes through our most basic habits. What we do, stop doing, or insisting on repeating day after day. Musonio Rufo, master of Epictetus, said that there is no virtue without bodily discipline, and that the self-control of the soul begins paradoxically by the submission of the body to reason. This means that the tranquility we seek in the mind may be hindered by the excess of stimuli, by the unregulated feeding, by the ignored sleep, by the absence of physical silence. The body is the first field where the war of restlessness begins. And if it is in conflict, the mind will never have peace. Watch your rhythm. How many times do you wake up and play in the world without even breathing with conscience? The first thing it touches is a screen. The first information that comes in is not yours, but the world. You already start the day reacting to messages, tasks, deadlines. And the body, this silent temple, has no room to organize. The pulse accelerates, the breath shortens, the tension grows. And then when something irritates you or frustrates you, you say that exploded from nothing. But nothing is by chance. The mind only explodes when the body is already inflamed. The calmness, then, needs roots. It needs ground. It needs concrete practices that return to the body the feeling of safety. Breathe slowly before responding. Eating with presence. Sleep without being the last to release the phone. Be silent. Not only external but also muscular. How many tensions do you carry without noticing? Shoulders raised, tight jaw, closed hands. Small gestures that show that the body is in a state of war, even when there is no battle. To be stoic is not to live above the body. It is to dwell on the body with reverence. It is to understand that virtue is born of constant choices, and these choices begin with what you do with your time, with your habits, with your limits. If you ignore the body snakes, and the charge always comes with interest, tiredness, irritation, impulsiveness, insomnia, emotional lack of control. Ancient philosophy never separated mind and body. For them, everything was a living unity, and true serenity only became possible when that unity was respected. The sage does not eat in excess. He does not sleep by laziness, but also does not sacrifice rest by vanity. He observes his physical impulses not to repress them, but to understand them, because he knows that every little everyday choice shapes his character, and that character is the basis of peace. Perhaps you are seeking emotional control in complex techniques, when in fact what you lack is a little more water, a little less noise, a space without screens before sleeping. Small disciplines that seem banal, but that, applied with constancy, transform your physiology, and with it, your perception of the world. The body in harmony sends a message to the mind. It's okay. And that phrase, when felt from the inside out, is more powerful than any mantra. So don't underestimate what you feel in the physical. It is the thermometer of your inner state. Start small. Watch your breath right now. Drop your shoulders. Feel the ground. Calming the body is calming life, because in the end, every storm that starts in silence can also be dissolved with silence. And the peace that you so much seek may be hidden in the simplest gesture you haven't tried yet. Number 3. Stop trying to control others. There are times when pain does not come from an event, but from a person. A cold gesture, a calculated indifference, a word that hurts more by intention than by content. And when that happens, the instinct is clear. We try to understand, fix, please, or, at the limit, retaliate. We spend energy trying to shape behaviors, hoping that the other acts as we would like. But the more we hope they change, the more we give the key to our peace to the humor of others. Stoicism is relentless at this point. It forces us to recognize that the other is an unreachable territory. You do not control intentions. You do not control answers. You do not control even the presence or absence of the other in your life. But you control, and that changes everything, the place that this person occupies within you. And that is where your freedom lives. Think of someone who takes you off the axis. Maybe you don't have to think too much. It may be someone close to you. Someone who insists on making you small. Someone who doesn't listen, doesn't recognize, or simply pretends that you don't matter. And now ask yourself, how many times have you had a conversation in your head? How many nights have you missed reliving a scene? How many arguments have you made for dialogues that have never happened? How many times have you allowed the presence of the other, even absent, to continue invading your thoughts? This is the invisible cost of those who live trying to control the uncontrollable. You lose yourself by trying to govern minds that were never your own. And when you see it, you are living not your way, but the emotional response to someone who is not even more present. That is not love, nor justice. It is prison. And Stoicism, at that point, offers the only true key: conscious detachment. To let go is not to forget. It's not to pretend that it didn't hurt. It's to accept that you won't receive the apology, the recognition or validation you expected, and yet choose to follow in one piece. It's to say to yourself, this person exists, but doesn't decide how I feel anymore. That's strength. That's silent power. That's emotional maturity. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the things that trouble us are within us and not in the world. And he knew what he was talking about. He ruled an empire at war, and yet wrote his reflections as the one watering a plant, because he knew that the real battlefield was not Rome, it was the mind itself. If you want to live in peace, you need to clean the internal rooms that other people have occupied without deserving. You need to close the windows through which the judgments, comparisons, unspoken words entered. You need to understand that forgiveness is not a quitting, it is letting go. Release control, drop expectation, drop weight, die. And when you let go, you realize that the other never had as much power as it seemed. Choose today who has access to your internal space. Choose with discretion. Choose with affection. Not everyone deserves to be there. And those who deserve it, you recognize not by the absence of conflict, but by the lightness they leave when they leave, or by the strength they help you to keep when they stay. Stoicism does not invite us to isolation. It invites us to autonomy. It invites us to the wisdom of loving without canceling, of helping without emptying, of listening without absorbing everything. Whoever learns to limit the emotional space of the other, learns to expand inside. and whoever expands becomes immeasurable, and therefore unattainable. Number 4. Your peace does not depend on the world being in peace. You've realized how much of your suffering doesn't come from what really happens, but what did you expect to happen? You leave home waiting for understanding, and you're in a hurry. You wait for support, and you get silence. Imagine that today everything will work out, and then the day knocks you down in the first few minutes. And in the middle of it, you feel that your calm has been kidnapped, as if the world is owing you harmony, and for some reason, it refuses to pay. Heracles, a Stoic less quoted but deeply lucid, said that the more we cling to what is out of our control, the more we turn away from peace. And if we look carefully, we will see that our uneasiness is born exactly from this attachment, from the expectation that the world will be organized according to our desires, that people will react in the way we consider fair, that life will walk at a comfortable and predictable pace. But it does not walk, and it has never walked. The world is not a stage set up to please us. It does not read our intentions, nor does it necessarily reward what is just. It is unpredictable, imperfect, and often indifferent. And that is not cruelty. It is nature. The attempt to find peace controlling the world is like trying to soothe an agitated sea with your hands. You exhaust, frustrate, drown, and the sea continues to be sea. But there is another way, one that begins in the only territory really its posture, its way of standing before what cannot change, its choice to respond rather than react, its silent decision not to allow external chaos to become internal as well. That is the heart of Stoicism, not the denial of storms, but the construction of a shelter within itself. Think now of something recent that took away your peace. A conflict, a loss, a frustrated expectation. Ask yourself, was this under my control? And if the answer is no, why did I let you invade my center? Why did I give so much space to what does not depend on me, and so little to what depends? The answer lies in the way we were taught to live, conditioned to seek security in what is external, when true stability is born only from the internal realm. Peace is not a reflection of the world. It is a decision. And like every decision, it requires practice, persistence, and above all, vigilance. You can start now with little acts. Instead of wishing everything to line up, align yourself. Take a deep breath before you react. Silence an answer that would only increase confusion. Walk slowly where everything seems to run. Choose not to participate in the war that the other tries to provoke. That is not weakness. It is tamed force. It is emotional sovereignty. And remember, life will continue to be uncertain. People will continue to be flaws, and the future will remain unreachable. But still, you can choose to keep your mind firm, the soul calm, the heart at peace. Not because everything around is fine, but because you chose no longer to negotiate your serenity with the unpredictable. Number 5, learn to silence inside. Close your eyes for a moment. What do you hear? Maybe a background noise, some sound coming from the street, or even the echo of your own thoughts trying to organize yourself in chaos. Now imagine this. What if what exhausts you is not what happens outside, but what you never knew how to silence inside? Cleanthes, successor of Zeno and one of the pillars of ancient Stoicism, said that it is not the noise that destroys man, but the fact that he no longer knows how to hear silence. And the silence that he spoke was not the absence of sound, but the presence of himself, the quietness of the mind, the rest of the senses, the space between one thought and another where clarity can finally arise. We lost that skill. We lost because we confused being silent with being disconnected, and we forget that it is in the void that essence appears. Modern life conditions us to noise. The feed does not stop. Notifications vibrate, music touches, voices cross the head. When there is no sound, there is image. When there is no image, there is thought. And even when everything seems calm, the mind runs, accelerated, hungry, untamed. The body is stopped, but the inner world is at war. Have you ever felt that? That tiredness that does not come from work, but from sensory overload. The exhaustion of those who do not have a minute of peace within their own skin. That is why silence today has become revolutionary, an act of resistance, a gesture of healing, a return, not silence as escape, but as a fertile field. To silence is to observe thought without getting lost in it. It is to realize that not every idea needs to be followed. Not every emotion needs to be fed. Not every stimulus deserves response. It is to understand that you are not what you think. You are the one who realizes what you think. Try to remember the last time you were in absolute silence for 5 minutes. Without music, without screen, without voice. It seems little, but for many it is impossible. Because silence exposes us. It brings out everything that was pushed under the carpet of distraction. Angst, doubts, old sorrows, insecurities that we would rather not face. And so we prefer the noise. But Stoicism invites you to do the opposite. Sit down with these inner voices. Look each one in the eyes and say, I am here. I am not going to run away from me. This is one of the greatest acts of courage that you can practice. And it changes everything. Because when you learn to be silent, you begin to realize what really matters. What once seemed urgent loses strength. What seemed to consume you reveals itself small. What seemed to be a problem dissolves from the simple perspective of calm. Silence, as well as Stoicism, does not solve the facts. It transforms you before them. Practice can begin in a simple way. 1 minute a day, then 3, then 5. Not to empty your mind, but to stop being her slave. To listen to what is behind the constant noise. To discover that within you, there is a space where nothing touches you, where nothing you lack, where everything fits. That is the silence that Cleanthes spoke. Not what isolates, but what reconnects. And when you start practicing this inner silence, something curious happens. You react less, wait more. You understand better. You speak more intently. The world remains the same, but you change, and that changes everything. Because in the end, true peace is not a place where there is no noise. It's a state where the noise no longer commands you. Number 6, you need less than you believe. Have you noticed how almost everything that distresses you is linked to an idea of scarcity? The scarcity of time, recognition, money, love. We live believing that we are missing, always missing. We have a little more to rest, a little more to feel safe, a little more to feel worthy. And in this race for the more, life goes on without us realizing that enough was already here, inside. Chrysippus, the successor of Cleanthes and one of the greatest architects of Stoicism, wrote, "Freedom is the domain of necessity." He did not say this as one who despises the world, but as one who understands that all you really need to live with dignity, strength, and serenity is within the reach of a well-trained mind. And what takes you from it is precisely excess of desires, comparisons, dependencies. Modern society thrives by convincing you that you are not enough, that you need to be younger, richer, more productive, more desired. And without realizing it, you will accumulate empty promises, new habits, new goals, new objects. But behind it all, there is a void that only grows. Because no accumulation fills what was born of the feeling of want. Stoicism looks you in the eye and says, "Stop. You don't need so much. You just need to regain clarity. Return to the essentials. Breathe slower. Turn off the comparison. Think what still pulses. Accept what hasn't arrived. And give up, not as loss, but as liberation. Think about what you think you need now to feel at peace. A better job, a different body, a specific message. An answer from the past? Now ask yourself, What if none of this comes? Will you surrender to the revolt, or will you learn to walk anyway? To master the need is not to be content with anything. It is to know what is legitimate desire and what is emotional addiction. It is to be able to look at something that the whole world says you should want and realize that that has nothing to do with you. That real freedom is not to conquer everything, but to need little. The Stoic is not indifferent to the beauty of the world, nor refuses to grow or prosper. But he does not negotiate his peace with what does not depend on him. He desires what is natural, what is just, what is his by merit and work. But he does not kneel before what escapes his influence. There is a kind of power that is born only when you look at what you have and feel, it is enough for today. This disarms the impulse of comparison, cuts the cycle of dissatisfaction, clears the fog of blind desire. And in this space comes something rare, lucid gratitude. The gratitude that does not deny pain, but involves it with perspective. You'll realize that the less you carry, the farther you walk, the less you wait. The more surprised you are that the less you demand from the world, the more generous the world seems. Because the filter changes, the look changes, and the person who changes inside changes everything. If you want to start now, look around. Be quiet inside and watch what remains. Observe what you have, which does not depend on applause, which sustains you even in difficult days. There is enough. There is your freedom. Number 7. Not everything that offends you deserves an answer. Have you ever noticed how certain offenses stick to the skin? As if they carried a kind of poison that spreads even hours after what happened. Sometimes it was not even an explicit aggression. It was just a tone of voice, a disdainful look, a phrase misplaced and ready. Something inside you lights up, and then the mind begins to work. How did he dare? She will see who she is dealing with. I should have answered. And so, even though the scene is over, the conflict continues within you. Seneca warns us, anger, at birth, always disguises itself as justice. That's how it deceives. Because in the heat of emotion, you do not feel that you are losing control. You feel that you are defending yourself. You feel that you are right. But anger, even when it seems legitimate, is almost always a mask for wounded pride. And when it becomes a reaction, it rarely corrects the other. It only compromises your own peace. Stoicism teaches us that true strength is not in responding quickly, but in knowing how to choose what deserves answer. Silence is often braver than shouting, because whoever responds to everything lives under the command of others. Any word is enough to trigger you. Any provocation drags you. And so, you become an easy-to-play instrument. Lose self-control. Learning not to react is an exercise of restraint, and more than that, of intelligence. It is not a matter of silence for weakness, but of silence for sovereignty. You observe the attack, listen to the tone, understand the game, and choose not to play. Because you realize that, many times, what comes from the other says more about it than about you. How many times have you responded on impulse and repented afterwards? How many arguments have been fueled by a pride that could not withstand silence? And what has it brought you? Peace or weight? Advance or wear? Reacting can relieve the ego momentarily, but almost always cost dearly. And the Stoic is the one who has learned to calculate that cost and avoid it when it is not worth it. Imagine now that every time you answer, you are delivering a part of yourself, a piece of your energy, of your clarity, of your peace. Is that fair? Is it worth delivering so much for so little? Because deep down, what hurts us most is not what the other said, but what our mind did with it. Repetition, rumination, dramatization. The other went away, but the offense stayed. And it stayed because you did not release it. To let go is an intimate act, to admit that the other does not have that power over you, that the offense exists, but no longer finds echo, that disrespect passes through you, but it does not enter. That the poison may be in the arrow, but it does not need to be in your bloodstream. You don't have to answer everything. You don't have to always explain yourself. Nor do you have to fight back every injustice. Some battles are just traps disguised as confrontation. And if you learn to recognize that, you will discover a kind of silence that isn't empty. It's shield. It's not escape. It's choice. And that silence, practiced with conscience, transforms the way you walk in the world. True serenity does not come from winning all arguments. It comes from not having to beat them. It comes from knowing that your peace is worth more than the last word. That your freedom begins when you learn to be silent, not by omission, but by wisdom. I sincerely hope that this message has been helpful. I sincerely want to congratulate you for coming this far and completing the video. That means that you want to improve as a person. If you liked the video, leave your comment. If you don't know what to say, comment gratitude. Then I'll know that you've watched until the end. If you're not already on the channel, what are you waiting for? Sign up now and join us. Stoicism is full of teachings like this, which are applicable to our everyday life. Therefore, I encourage you to continue learning about this philosophy. I leave here 2 videos full of Stoic wisdom so you can continue learning. Until next.